Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into a topic that's equal parts spine-tingling and eyebrow-raising signs of the end times and the return of Jesus. Picture this, you're outside looking up, and the sky's throwing a cosmic tantrum with solar flares, blood moons, and meteor showers like it's auditioning for a disaster movie. But here's the kicker. While the sky's putting on a show, you probably won't survive this if you're only watching the popcorn. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see if the end times feel different around the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge outside, feeling the breeze shift as the twilight deepens, and glance upward. The heavens have always fascinated humanity, not just for their beauty, but for the stories we tell ourselves about them. Ancient civilizations like the Babylonians and Mayans tracked eclipses and comet appearances with meticulous care, believing these celestial events were messages from the gods. Take the blood moon, for example, an eerie red-tinted lunar eclipse. Historically, some cultures regarded it as a dire omen. Fast forward to recent decades, and a series of blood moons lining up with Jewish festivals have stirred talk of prophetic significance, spurring headlines from apocalyptic bloggers to evangelical circles. Historians still argue whether these coincidences are truly meaningful or just human pattern-seeking at work. Meanwhile, the sun seems to have a personality of its own. Solar storms, those massive bursts of charged particles, sometimes knock out satellites or cause northern lights to dance closer to the equator. In 1859, the Carrington event, a powerful solar flare, fried telegraph lines across Europe and North America, leaving operators baffled and sparks flying. Quirky fact, during that event, some telegraph systems reportedly ran on induced currents alone, even with their batteries disconnected. Nowadays, the concern isn't just about gadgets, but what a massive flare could do to modern power grids. Some conspiracy theorists whisper that such celestial activity is a harbinger of divine judgment or cosmic reset, though scientists chalk it up to natural solar cycles. Even more bizarre is the idea that planets themselves might align to signal shifts on Earth. While astronomy tells us that planetary alignments have minimal gravitational effect on our planet, fringe groups love to hype the idea of planetary conspiracies. Ancient texts mention signs in the heavens as precursors to monumental change, but whether these are metaphorical or literal remains hotly debated among scholars and theologians alike. The debate reminds us while we peer upward searching for meaning, the sky remains an open book, one where interpretation often reveals more about us than the cosmos. You step outside again, but this time it's not the sky catching your eye, it's the trembling earth beneath your feet, the roar of storms swelling louder than before. Natural disasters have always been a part of life's rhythm, but lately they seem dialed up to 11, as if the planet itself is auditioning for a dramatic finale. Hurricanes grow fiercer, wildfires spread with alarming speed, and earthquakes rattle with unsettling regularity. Take the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, a devastating quake that reshaped both the city and modern earthquake science. It's a historical fact that such disasters occur cyclically, but the uptick in frequency and intensity over recent decades has sparked quite the debate. Scientists puzzle over whether climate change or natural tectonic shifts bear the brunt of blame, while some end times watchers see this as unmistakable proof of apocalyptic prophecy unfolding. Remember that quirky tidbit about the 1930s Dust Bowl? Massive dust storms swallowed whole towns driven by drought and poor farming practices, turning fertile lands to wasteland. It's an odd reminder that human action can accelerate natural disaster cycles, blurring the line between nature's fury and our own recklessness. These events feed into the narrative of a world unraveling, yet historians and environmental experts still argue whether our modern era is truly more violent or just better documented. Floods are another classic staple of end times scenarios. The biblical story of Noah's flood resonates across cultures and epochs, and today's rising sea levels bring the story uncomfortably close to home for millions living in coastal regions. The 1931 China floods, considered among the deadliest natural disasters in history, killed millions and displaced tens of millions more, reminding us of the devastating power of water. Oddly, some fringe theories propose secret underwater civilizations or lost continents swallowed by these waters, adding a sci-fi twist to the mix. Scholars debate whether such stories are mythic allegories or rooted in ancient catastrophic events, further thickening the fog around natural disaster lore. Storms have become modern-day heralds of chaos too. Hurricanes like Katrina in 2008 and more recent monster storms like Ida leave trails of destruction and raise questions about humanity's preparedness. While meteorologists study improved prediction methods, a certain segment of society reads these tempests as signs of divine wrath or the planet's final tantrum. The line between scientific explanation and prophetic interpretation remains a lively battleground, reminding us how stories shape our understanding of the chaos swirling around us. You watch the world unfold before you, and it's clear society is shifting like a sandcastle, slowly giving way to rising tides. Morals, once taken as bedrock, now seem to wobble under the pressure of new values, debates, and lifestyles. Historically, civilizations like ancient Rome faced similar reckonings. Historians still argue whether moral decay was a cause or symptom of the empire's fall. That messy, often gray area keeps popping up whenever people talk about signs of the end times. Here's a quirky fact. In the 1920s, flappers and jazz clubs shook up social norms so much that some religious leaders declared the decade the roaring hell. The backlash was fierce, yet it was part of a cultural wave that eventually redefined freedom and expression. Fast forward to today, and discussions about gender, sexuality, and family structures spark heated debates, with some viewing these changes as evidence the world is sliding off its axis, while others argue it's just progress unfolding. The rise of individualism is another piece of the puzzle. Social scientists note that Western societies have trended toward personal autonomy over communal responsibility in recent decades. Some scholars debate whether this shift fuels loneliness and fragmentation or promotes liberation and diversity. End times narratives often highlight this as a moral warning. People will be lovers of self-proud and disobedient, as ancient texts put it, though exactly what that means varies wildly depending on who's interpreting. Social media adds a spicy modern layer to moral discourse. Viral outrage, cancel culture, and echo chambers create a digital battleground where values clash at light speed. Some fringe commentators claim this online turmoil signals a breakdown in societal fabric accelerating toward chaos, while others see it as a new form of communal negotiation, messy but necessary. Remember that crocodile using sunscreen? It was a viral hoax that spread like wildfire, illustrating how misinformation can muddy the waters of truth and morality. Religious pluralism also complicates the scene. The global mix of beliefs challenges any one group's claim to moral certainty. Scholars debate whether this pluralism encourages tolerance or confusion about core values. Meanwhile, apocalyptic rhetoric adapts to fit this patchwork reality, sometimes merging old prophecies with new social critiques. The net effect is a cultural stew thick with uncertainty, suspicion, and hope, a potent backdrop for end-time speculation. You keep your eyes peeled because the stage has always been crowded with pretenders, false messiahs, charlatans, and charismatic leaders promising salvation, but delivering chaos. History is littered with these figures, from the self-proclaimed messiahs of the first century to more recent impostors whose followers clung to hope amid disillusionment. Take Simon Magus, a figure mentioned in early Christian texts, who some say was the original fake Messiah. His story is a cautionary tale reminding us that deception is nothing new. Historians still argue whether his influence was widespread or mostly symbolic, but the lesson sticks. Skepticism can be a survival skill. Fast forward to the 19th century and meet Joseph Smith, founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, often labeled a false prophet by critics, but revered by millions. His emergence sparked theological debates and social upheaval. Interestingly, fringe groups still pop up today, claiming new revelations or secret knowledge, some even using modern technology to broadcast their claims far and wide. The internet, as you'll recall from earlier sections, acts as both a megaphone and a trapdoor, amplifying voices of truth and deception alike. One quirky fact: in 1978, a man named Jim Jones convinced over 900 followers to commit mass suicide in Jonestown, Guyana, in one of the most tragic examples of cult leadership gone wrong. His rise was fueled by promises of utopia, racial equality, and salvation. Classic false messiah tropes with a lethal twist. The event remains a chilling reminder that charisma plus desperation is a volatile mix. Today, conspiracy theories fuel new false messiah narratives. Think about figures who claim extraterrestrial origins or secret missions from unknown powers. Scholars debate whether these modern myths are a form of spiritual searching or social discontent manifesting in new guises. What's clear is that the hunger for meaning and deliverance is as alive as ever, sometimes manifesting in wildly inventive ways. False messiahs tend to surge during times of turmoil and uncertainty, exploiting fear and hope simultaneously. The cycle repeats each generation, grappling with the same questions: who is trustworthy? How do we recognize the real deal? Your skepticism, tinged with curiosity, is your best compass as you navigate these choppy waters. You hear the distant rumble of conflict, whispers of war weaving through the headlines like an ominous soundtrack. War, after all, has been humanity's grim constant, a shadow stretching back millennia. The Peloponnesian War, fought between Athens and Sparta over 2,400 years ago, reshaped the ancient world, and historians still argue whether it marked the beginning of the end for classical Greece or was merely part of its turbulent evolution. This echoes today as modern conflicts flash across the news, with unsettling frequency fueling end times talk. Curiously, the idea of wars and rumors of wars is one of the oldest tropes in apocalyptic literature, often cited as a key sign before the final reckoning. Back in 1914, the eruption of World War I stunned the world, seen by some as the start of the prophesied beginning of sorrows. That war introduced mechanized slaughter on an unprecedented scale, shaking faith in progress itself. Fringe theorists love to dive into the coded meanings behind each conflict, linking current tensions to ancient texts with a fervor that would make a conspiracy board jealous. One quirky tidbit: the war to end all wars didn't end all wars. It ironically set the stage for World War II and a century packed with ongoing global unrest. The irony has not been lost on scholars and skeptics alike. Yet the debate continues: are these wars signs of an inevitable apocalypse or simply part of the ongoing human struggle for power and survival? Today's geopolitical landscape offers a complex tapestry of alliances and rivalries. Some see the gathering clouds over the South China Sea or tensions in the Middle East as pieces of a prophetic puzzle coming together, while others warn against reading too much into ever-shifting politics. The phrase "peace will be taken from the earth" from ancient prophecy often resurfaces in these discussions, prompting both anxiety and hope. Remember that solar flare frying telegraph lines from Section 1. Imagine what a modern war might do to interconnected global systems. The intersection of technology and conflict adds a new dimension to these age-old fears, amplifying the stakes and blurring lines between physical and cyber warfare. It's a layered, complicated dance that keeps us watching, wondering which rumor might become reality next. You can almost feel the invisible gaze, the digital eyes watching your every move as technology sprawls into every corner of life, sometimes like a helpful neighbor, other times like a slightly creepy stalker. Surveillance and data tracking have exploded, and the end times chatter around this is anything but quiet. Historically, empires have always kept tabs on their populations. The Roman Empire maintained extensive census records, and historians still argue whether this surveillance contributed to their control or eventual unraveling. Now, though, the scale and subtlety are something else entirely. Here's a quirky fact. Early spy satellites launched in the 1960s could capture images of large military installations, but today's commercial satellites can photograph a pizza delivery on your front porch. It's both fascinating and unsettling, right? The rise of smartphones, smart devices, and AI-driven monitoring systems means that privacy is a concept under constant negotiation. End times theorists often point to this as the mark of the beast moment, the idea that surveillance will become so pervasive that it controls buying, selling, and even personal identity. Technology's role isn't just surveillance, though. It's also the platform for global communication and misinformation. Remember the viral crocodile sunscreen hoax from Section 3 that spread faster than wildfire thanks to social media's reach. Scholars debate whether technology is ultimately a liberator, providing unprecedented access to knowledge, or a tool of control, shaping perceptions and behaviors in subtle ways. Some fringe voices warn of a coming digital dictatorship, where AI algorithms decide who gets what, when, and how, sometimes linked to biblical prophecy of total control. The reality, as experts point out, is far murkier. Governments, corporations, and individuals all wield digital power, often with conflicting interests and agendas. This tangled web makes it difficult to pinpoint a clear end times scenario, but it certainly adds a new layer of complexity to ancient prophecies. Imagine a future where your social credit score determines not just loans or jobs, but your very ability to participate in society. While that sounds like science fiction, some countries are already experimenting with such systems. The question lingers, are we witnessing the groundwork for the final prophetic chapter, or just the natural evolution of technology in a connected world? Your digital footprint may be more significant than you think. You notice how the world's powers seem to be knitting themselves closer together, sometimes like an awkward family reunion that nobody quite signed up for. The idea of nations gathering, uniting, or aligning for a common purpose echoes through ancient prophecies and modern headlines alike. Historically, the League of Nations, born after World War I, was humanity's first major attempt at international unity, though historians still argue whether it was a noble experiment or a doomed distraction. Today, we watch organizations like the United Nations, NATO, and emerging economic blocs attempt to hold the world together, sometimes with shaky results. A quirky tidbit: the European Union started as a simple coal and steel agreement, but grew into a political and economic union with its own currency laws, and yes, a controversial bureaucracy that sparks plenty of memes and debates. Some see this as a stepping stone toward the one-world government, predicted by some prophetic interpretations. Fringe theories love to jump on every new treaty or summit, seeing secret alliances and shadowy agendas that signal the tightening of global control. The prophetic lens often focuses on the kings of the earth gathering for battle or negotiation, sometimes linked to modern superpowers jockeying for influence in the Middle East or the Arctic. Some interpretations point to the enigmatic Gog and Magog as metaphorical or literal players in this geopolitical drama. Scholars still debate whether these figures are ancient nations, symbolic forces, or future entities yet to arise. Meanwhile, globalization has created an interdependent world where the fate of one nation can ripple across continents in hours. This interconnectedness can breed cooperation but also tension, as economic crises, pandemics, and environmental disasters don't respect borders. End times discussions often cite this as a double-edged sword, either a precursor to peace or a setup for massive conflict. Think back to that solar flare in Section 1. Now multiply its impact across a globally connected grid. The more entwined we become, the more fragile the system might seem, giving rise to fears that any breakdown could cascade into chaos. Whether this is the gathering storm before the final showdown, or just the growing pains of a complex world, remains a question for scholars and prophets alike. You tune in to the vibrant tapestry of beliefs around the globe, where religion still hums a powerful, sometimes discordant tune. The role of faith in shaping perceptions of the end times is undeniable, yet it's anything but uniform. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, each brings its own eschatological stories and expectations. Historically, religious movements have often surged during times of crisis. The Great Schism in Christianity, for example, shaped two major branches that still debate prophecy and destiny. Scholars still argue how much these theological divides influence popular end times ideas today. Here's a quirky tidbit. The rapture concept, popular in many evangelical circles, is actually a relatively modern development gaining prominence only in the 19th and 20th centuries. Earlier Christian writings didn't clearly lay out this sudden ascension of believers. This evolution shows how religious interpretations adapt to cultural contexts, which makes prophecy interpretation a living, breathing conversation rather than a static script. Interfaith dialogue adds complexity and sometimes hope. While some view competing eschatologies as points of conflict, others see opportunities for mutual understanding. For instance, Islamic texts talk about the return of Isa Jesus, who plays a role in the final days, but in ways different from Christian teachings. These overlaps fuel both scholarly debates and grassroots curiosity. Religious scholars also wrestle with how to interpret ancient prophetic books. Are they literal, symbolic, allegorical, or something else? The Book of Revelation in Christianity, with its vivid imagery of beasts, seals, and trumpets, invites endless interpretation. Some see it as historical allegory, others as a roadmap to future events, and still others as a spiritual metaphor. This ambiguity feeds the diversity of end times expectations. You might recall from earlier sections how political and technological shifts intertwine with religious ideas. Religion doesn't exist in a vacuum, but interacts dynamically with society. This interplay keeps end times discussions both grounded in tradition and wildly speculative, leaving plenty of room for wonder, skepticism, and faith. You start to feel the weight of anticipation settling in as whispers turn to expectant murmurs about the return of Jesus, the ultimate climax of Christian eschatology. Scriptural clues scattered through the New Testament paint a picture of a coming day when Jesus will return, but how and when remain hotly contested questions. The Apostle Paul spoke of the day of the Lord arriving like a thief in the night, a phrase that leaves room for both suddenness and surprise. Historians and theologians still argue whether these texts were meant as immediate warnings to early Christians or prophetic glimpses into a far future. One quirky fact, the idea of Jesus returning in clouds, comes from verses that early Christians would have connected to Old Testament imagery like Ezekiel's visions and the Book of Daniel. This fusion of imagery has inspired everything from medieval art to modern-day sky-watching groups scanning for celestial signs. It's a reminder that symbols often carry layers of meaning that shift across time and culture. Expectations about the return vary widely. Some Christians envision a literal, physical second coming with trumpets blaring and angels descending. Others interpret these events metaphorically, emphasizing a spiritual return manifesting through justice and transformation in the world. This spectrum shows how belief can be deeply personal and influenced by tradition, culture, and personal experience. You might remember earlier how false messiahs and wars play into the broader narrative. Many believers view these as precursors or birth pain signs that the ultimate return is drawing nearer. Yet caution is advised. Countless predicted dates for Jesus' return have come and gone without event, highlighting the dangers of date setting and overconfidence. In modern times, some groups have turned to technology, live streaming end times conferences using apps to decode biblical prophecies, or even setting up global watch parties for astronomical events. The intersection of faith and technology creates new avenues for community, but also new opportunities for misinformation. Your own role, then, is to engage with these ideas thoughtfully, balancing hope, skepticism, and personal conviction as you navigate this complex landscape. You find yourself at the crossroads of preparation and panic, two responses that often define how people face the possibility of the end times. Practical wisdom suggests readiness without paranoia, a fine line to walk. Historically, movements predicting imminent apocalypse have led to everything from social reform to mass hysteria. The Millerites of the 19th century, for example, expected Jesus' return in 1844. When it didn't happen, an event called the Great Disappointment, many followers either gave up faith or founded new denominations. Historians still debate how these reactions shaped American religious history. Here's a quirky fact. Survivalist communities often stockpile supplies and practice skills not just for societal collapse, but for personal empowerment and community building. Their efforts range from highly organized to downright eccentric, including underground bunkers and odd rituals. This blend of practicality and paranoia reflects a deep human desire for control amid uncertainty. Skepticism, too, is a healthy response. Critical thinking helps navigate the flood of information, from sensational headlines to earnest prophecy. Scholars stress the importance of discernment, urging believers to avoid fear-driven decisions while maintaining hope. Balancing faith with reason creates space for thoughtful engagement rather than reactive fear. Your practical takeaway: focus on what you can control, kindness, community, and personal growth. Prepare for challenges, yes, but avoid spiraling into doom spirals or conspiracy rabbit holes. The end times narrative has inspired resilience, charity, and renewal throughout history, offering lessons as relevant now as ever. Remember the soft hum of the fan you turned on earlier. Let that steady rhythm remind you that even amid uncertainty, life continues, and so can your peace of mind. Whether the end is near or far, your calm presence and thoughtful choices matter most.